to help bring me up. First was, dress for success. Nothing makes me crazier than when I have someone come into our offices, I sit them down in a $50,000 boardroom, and they have a baseball cap and a t-shirt on. It's happened. You've lost your credibility with me before you even open your mouth. Dress for where you want to be, not where you are. Here's how impactful that can be. My first opportunity to manage within that group, and I won't go through the first steps based on limited time, I'll just take you to, I was finally given an opportunity through a series of really hard work projects that were successful. I was given an opportunity to run a small division in our company. It had about 24 employees. It was located in the back end of our head office, and it was a small manufacturing facility. Everyone in that group had been there for not less than 5 years. I'd been with the company about 3. Most of them were older than I was. Most of them had more life experience and experience in our business. So, I went back to things that I had learned about the importance of earning being the key word, the respect of our team. And the very first thing that I learned was how you present yourself will earn you instant respect. At that time, I remember this again distinctly, I did not have a lot of money. I had 2 young children. I couldn't afford much of anything. But I went out and bought 3 white dress shirts and 3 ties. And the very first day that I walked into the plant, I walked in with a white shirt that didn't fit very well and a tie that probably wasn't tied properly. But I walked in like I ran the place and that I was the boss. Funny thing happened. Everyone bought in. Here we are now. That was about 15 years ago. A lot has happened since then. You know, you see me here today with a white shirt and a tie. Always pressed, always. If I show up at the office now without a white shirt and a tie, it's like something bad happened. What's going on, Ken? Are you okay? Truly, that's what happens because it's become a brand, which we're going to talk about later. Your own brand. So now, if I show up, and I could very comfortably show up every day, most of the executives I rub shoulders with on a daily basis would never get. The comment is, I'm past that, I don't have to wear a tie anymore. Which is fine. We live in Alberta. I mean, let's face it, guys. This isn't downtown corporate Toronto. So it's not about the tie, but it is about dressing professional. So that when you walk in a room, there's an instant credibility. Regardless what you know, there's a perception that you know a lot. Does that make sense? Okay. So we start with dressing for success. Whatever your version of dressing for success is, and please don't get lost in the tie thing. That's my brand. You don't have to be there, but you do have to be pressed and confident, shoes nicely shined or polished as best you can. You'll also feel extremely confident when you walk into a room. Powerful. Talked about visualizing your goals. I talked about when I first, within the Crystal Glass Group, identified the weakness. What was the second thing that I did? I went and told someone who mattered in my world. Why would I do that? Regardless what they think, I'm going to hold myself accountable by telling someone what I'm about to do. Because I will tell you something, when you tell somebody around you that you're going to do something, Even when you wake up in the morning thinking, I don't really feel like it today. And then you look over at that person and you go, ah, shoot, I told them I was going to do this. You will do it. It will force you to do it. I'm going to give you another great anecdotal story. This is, everything I share with you is from my history. It's really happened. I don't make any of this up. Early days at Crystal Glass, they identified that I might have some management experience, thankfully, someone above me. I said, but Ken, if you're going to take this industry seriously, you have to learn how to do all the things it is that we do. So you're going to have to go learn how to do windshields. And they put me out at a shop that doesn't exist anymore. We've since closed it, but out on Fort Road. And I worked with a couple of fellows there, and one of them had been with the company for about 35 years. And I can say his name because he knows I talk about it and we laugh about it now. His name was Lloyd Roadhouse. And Lloyd Roadhouse is this tall, slim man with a giant beard, the friendliest man you will ever meet. He's got a beautiful little farm, has a bunch of animals out in Gibbons. Just the nicest guy. Who else could I talk to? Just this friendly old guy. And he was the only other guy I had to work with other than my manager. So day after day after day, I would go to work and I would tear these windshields out and I'd cut my hands and I'd have urethane all over me because I wasn't very good at installing windshields. And I would be covered in this urethane and I'd sit down in the lunchroom with my 2 sandwiches and a brown bag in this dirty little lunchroom of a glass shop. And the table was about a 1950s or 60s old kitchen table, you know, with the metal legs and the vinyl or whatever is on it. And of course, we drank lots of Pepsi and Coke back then, and the thing was covered. I don't know why we didn't put them in a bucket, but there were all these empty cans placed up on the table. And here we are sitting having a conversation. And I was in one of those moods where I didn't want to be there, and I had to remind myself why I was there. So I wanted to share it so that I'd hold myself accountable. I said, Lloyd, the only reason I'm still here doing this is I'm going to manage a store in this company one day. And Lloyd says, yeah, sure, kid, whatever you say. I said, Lloyd, I'm serious. I believe what I'm telling you. It's a true story. And I guess I pushed it a little too far. And that sweet old man came down with his fist onto that table, and the pop cans flew all over the place. I jumped back and he said, you don't understand. I've been in this company for 30 years. No one gets a chance in this company. No one. I said, you believe what you want to believe and I'll believe what I want to believe, and I went back to work. But I told him. Some people will react that way. Let them. Because here's how the story ends. As things progress, I begin to move up. I have that opportunity. I put on my white shirt. I manage this division. And then from that, we turned this division around. It started making money and everybody's happy. And then I get asked, Ken, we're going to build this super plant. We'd like you to do it. We're going to talk about always saying yes in a moment. But with all the fear I had, I said, yes, I'll do it. And it didn't take very long, and that was successful. And then the phone rang one day, and it was Lloyd Roadhouse. Ken, just can't work over at this shop anymore. Think you got a spot for me over there? I hired him to come work for me at the plant. He's still there. He's 75 years old. And again, he's a beautiful man. As things continued, then it was another step, another opportunity for me, again, through working hard at that group and working through some of the things I'm going to talk about. But I had more success, and then it was a regional management opportunity. And we would walk by each other every once in a while. We'd see each other, and he'd say, hey, Ken, wow, good job, Ken. I'm really proud of you. And then it was the general manager's role. Here's what it's turned to now. He just walks by and goes. So, why do I tell you that? I think it's self-explanatory. Make sure you tell people, but visualize where you want to be. And then tell people where you want to be. Once you've done that, you're going to force yourself to move forward. Never say no. Say yes and figure it out. Talk about opportunities. I wanted to talk about opportunities given to me with Crystal Glass. Ed Bean discussion of building the new super plant, which is what I just shared with you for a moment. So I'm running this little division, this manufacturing plant. True story, when I took it over, it was consistently losing about $250,000 a year. The reason they kept it open is it was supporting all of our retail, and they were making money there, so they didn't really care. But here was the thing. In our organization, you got a salary, but you really made money based on being successful, because your bottom line you were bonused on, and it was a significant percentage. Well, they didn't care if I ever made money at that role, because I was coming in and taking care of it. No, you go ahead. So they didn't care if I ever made money, but I cared. So I worked very hard, and we built that up. And from that, I looked at our organization, and I could see again a weakness. We were moving product all over the place to do what we call multiple value adds. So we would cut the glass here, and then we'd send it, and not just a couple of blocks. We would send it from Edmonton to Swift Current, Saskatchewan, a piece of glass, and we would temper it there. And we'd ship it back to Edmonton, and we'd turn it into a sealed unit window. This thing was touched about 6 times. It took about 4 weeks. It was ridiculous. It was just how the company had evolved. But I approached the owner of the company at the time, I'll never forget, petrified, Ed Bean. I walked up, you didn't get near Ed Bean. Ed Bean was our fearless leader that no one got to talk to. Don't talk to Ed, because he's the big boss. I walked up one day, I knocked, thank you. I knocked on his door, I said, can I see you for a second? He says, come on in, Tiger. I'll never forget, he always called me Tiger. Come on in, Tiger. So in I came and I sat down. This little old guy, honestly, he's not taller than this. He's an old fella, big friendly smile, but you knew he was the boss. And he's one of those guys who knew how to set your chair lower than his. And had a great big huge desk. And I sat down on that little chair. And I looked up at him and I said, I have an idea, Ed. Thankfully, he was a true entrepreneur and he was very supportive. And he said, I told him what my vision was. He said, well, Ken, if you're gonna do this, let's do this. And it was considerably larger than my vision. In the end, we did it. The building exists. It's over on 32nd Avenue near 99th Street. It's called Can-Am Glass Products, and it's a 60,000 square foot manufacturing facility, very high tech, and generates now a little over 10 million in revenue a year. It worked. But had I said no, because to be fair, I had no business taking that project on. I wasn't ready. I didn't know anything about it. All I knew was this is glass, we cut it, we turn it into this. Remember, I wasn't very good at installing windshields either. But I could learn, so I just said yes. Say yes. Don't hum, don't haw, don't, I gotta think about it. Just say yes. And then go and figure it out. Because nothing in the evolution of our planet happened without somebody learning how to do it. So just say yes. Any opportunity you get, just say yes and go and figure it out. Identify your weaknesses and then surround yourself with the best. Always be training your replacement. I live by a theory, Henry T. Ford. I would always rather have 1% of 100 people's effort than 100% of my own. Why? Because we only can do what we can do in the 24 hours a day that is allotted to us. You can't physically do more. It's impossible. So if I find 100 people willing to put 1% effort in, I've just duplicated myself. And if I find 1,000 people, I've exponentially duplicated myself. Here's one of the things that happens in a corporate environment. To a man, almost every unsuccessful person I've seen in middle to low high management has failed based on this premise. They're afraid to hire people better than themselves. I do it all the time. I look for people who are better than I am. That's the ones I want. If you're that insecure that you're worried only about your sustainability in that company, then you already have a challenge. You better figure that out before you even try to move forward. I have an example of one of those people in this room. Dylan, put your hand up. I don't mean to embarrass you, but I'm going to. Dylan Shiwi. There's a guy. See, know your strengths and weaknesses. I come from the street. I have a grade 12 education at best. Now I have common sense, and I know how to work, and I can learn. Dylan is college and university educated. When he writes a report, I can barely understand it. But he can, and so can our customers, and so can the others within our executive team that have those strengths. And if I don't have people like Dylan on our team, I'm only as good as I am. You had better understand we all have weaknesses. And surround yourself with people who strengthen you, who make you as a team better. Nothing makes me crazier than when I find out we missed out on an opportunity for a terrific employee because someone was afraid for their own job. Because here's the thing. If you don't actively pursue your replacement, you can never move up. It's elementary. If you're the best, then you're in the wrong room. You had better be finding people that complement what you do and never be afraid to be training your replacement. When I ran that plant that we built, I'll just go to that place in time. There were two guys that I keyed in on. And I worked with them closely. And I every day made sure I taught them everything I thought that I know. Because with what I know, shared with what they already knew, made them very, very useful to the company. But more importantly, when my opportunity came to move to another role, I was able to say, I'm confident in leaving this in their hands. Now I'm going to go here. And I did the same thing again until I got to where I am now. And I am always actively looking, even today, for my replacement. Very powerful. Never be afraid to hire people better than you and identify your strengths and weaknesses. Fill your weaknesses with those who have them. Once you've found those people, give clear instructions, set dates, and hold people around you and yourself accountable. Powerful tool. So here we come back to the 1% of 100 people's effort versus 100% of my own. 1%. We're always saying, oh, I wish I could get an employee who cared and did things like I do, who worked the hours I do, who will do what I'm willing to do. Good chance they don't exist. How many of those people who work around you are willing to be here on a Saturday for self-improvement? They're out doing whatever it is they do on their weekends. So the chances of you finding someone who's the you are probably pretty slim. So be willing to accept, and this is the number I've come up with in my own mind, if I can find someone willing to do, from my perspective, 80% of what I'm willing to do, then I found a gem. And if I find someone with 60%, that's a good person to have on my team. But now, you need to understand you're the leader. Number one, you're leading by example every day. By being at something like this. By doing the things in the evening that nobody else is willing to do. By taking on the extra project that no one else is willing to do. But more importantly, you're the leader. If you want to ensure that you're developing a team and growing in your corporate culture and leadership, this is a key. When you offer someone a task or they accept a task, hold them accountable. Pick a date, a firm date. And don't let that date go by without reconnecting with them. Powerful tool. Because people, by nature, we procrastinate. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll get at it. Maybe some of you in the room don't, but I can tell you the people that you hire will. Over and over again, from experience. However, if you take control, and you, with their help, always input from that person, you don't know what they have in front of them. That's the beauty of it. Because if you get them to help you pick the date, they contributed that to you. They offered that to you. They knew what their world looks like, and they said, on this day, I will be able to complete your task, Ken. Okay, it goes in my calendar, and if you looked at my calendar, it's full of those. At the level I'm at now, I have multiple things happening at any given moment. Here's the beauty. I have 1% of everyone else's time, and only a few percent of my own to manage it. Because it pops up on my calendar, and I go, ah, Dylan was supposed to have that report back to me today. And it's 4 o'clock. Dylan doesn't do that. Dylan always gets them in early. That's why I love Dylan. But there are others in our group that might not. That don't. It's a fact. I call them immediately. How are you coming along with that report? It's due now. It's amazing how quickly those things get taken care of. So as you grow as a leader, understand how to lead and grow your team. The importance of decisive decision-making. Indecisive decision-making can paralyze your opportunity for growth. Always applying common sense, calculating the risk, and then being assertive and confident. It's equally important to monitor the results. You'll be changing the direction, change the direction when required. I wrote down an example so I'd remember it. Here's a great example. So what I'm talking about here is decisive decision making. Here's another challenge with some leaders. Got to think about that for a while. You know, that could have an effect over here if I... Listen, get back to me next week. I'll think about it. Never. Apply common sense. Key. Think it through quickly. Your gut, 99% of the time, will be right. If you understand the business that you're involved in, and you know the nuances of what come at you every day, and you're able to quickly calculate the risks, because it's something we do naturally every day anyways, when something comes at you, do not leave people hanging. If there was a fire in this building, now this is a bad example because we have someone who knows this building. Let's just say we're in a building that none of us have been in, a gymnasium, even better. And there's 6 doors to the gymnasium. And the fire alarm goes off and someone from the outside yells, "Fire!" Half of the people in the room will stand up and wait to see who goes to what door. And the person they feel most confident with, they will follow out that door. It's human nature. It's exactly the same thing when you're leading people, when you want to grow in a corporate environment. Apply common sense, be confident, but make decisions. Once you've made the decision, stand by it, but constantly be evaluating the result. Here's a funny thing. Leaders who have challenge, some of them have the first piece nailed down. They're decisive decision makers, but they don't bend. And there's some people who, when the fire comes and everybody's running out the door and the leader runs out the door, then there's flames everywhere. You don't want to be wrong, so he just keeps running right into the flames. Bad idea. You have to understand, 100% of the shots that you take will not go in the net. You have to be willing to take the shots. But you also have to be smart enough to know when there is a fire there, even though I told everybody to go that way, I better stop and make a change, adjust. Don't be afraid of being wrong. I think so many people, especially in management, are always afraid of being wrong. So that does two things. It'll paralyze them on the front end, where they're afraid to make a decision, or they're so convicted internally that they've made the right decision that they run right into the fire. Decisive decision making and willingness to adjust. Powerful, powerful tools. The example that I had written down here just as an anecdotal story is my mentor. We all have one. My mentor right now, unfortunately, is in the hospital and has onset dementia, and it's breaking my heart because I only got 20-some years with him. But it's our founder, Ed Bean. Ed Bean's 91 years old, and I wish I'd have met him in the 40s. One of the most brilliant, sincere, generous, intelligent, common sense thinking leaders I've ever met. A few years back, 15, 18 years ago, he thought it'd be a good idea to open up an airline. It's called Capital City Air. I don't know if any of you remember it, but the idea was it was going to operate out of the municipal airport when that existed. And there was a bylaw in place. It said maximum 6 passengers could fly out on any plane from there. And he was certain that he could get that bylaw changed. But it made sense to buy the airline first, so nobody else would beat him to it, and then go about having the bylaw changed. Pretty crafty, pretty intelligent, so everybody got behind him, and we bought 6 planes that hold 12 passengers each. You know where this is going. The municipal airport is closed now. When we finally sold those planes, we got about 30 cents on the dollar for the millions of dollars that were spent. He lost, I don't know, 50, 80 million dollars in that transaction. And I'll never forget sitting with him saying, Ed, let's talk about this thing. Like, what happened? He said, yeah, it failed. So what? I mean, what do you mean, so what? You lost like $80 million. So I can afford to lose 80 million. I might have made $1 billion. But when it got to a place where he could no longer sustain it, and he could see the writing on the wall, he got to work at selling the planes. And he said, okay, bad idea. He made the decision, he did it, and that one didn't work. But when he realized it, he changed directions quickly, and he did recover a lot of that money, because what we ended up with was a contra. It was actually very convenient for a while for me, because a couple of guys who bought those planes couldn't actually afford them in cash, so we did them on contra. They used them for private flights. Whenever I needed a plane, I just called down to the airport, said, fire it up, I'll be down in an hour, and off I would go. Very handy until that contra finally ran out. But my point is simply this. Number one, decisive decision making. Make a plan, use common sense. His plan wasn't a bad plan. And I guess this is more for the entrepreneurial groups versus the corporate groups, but I often talk more in depth about the entrepreneurial side.